The first thing we're going to take a look at is Trustero's control assurance feature. This is sometimes called continuous compliance monitoring, continuous control monitoring. The idea here is, how do you stay on top of the operating effectiveness of your controls at all times? How do you know everything is working? Make sure that if there is an issue, you know in a timely fashion so that you can take care of those issues. We're looking at a demo account for Trustero. And in this demo account, we have SOC 2 controls. The platform works with any compliance framework. We just find that SOC 2 is a nice, easy to understand, not so huge information security compliance framework. So that's why we've got it in here. As you can see in the name of this account, everything is passing. For this controls assurance feature, what that means is all of the controls in here have been scanned. They get scanned every single day. So we evaluate them every day. We conduct an examination and test similar to what an auditor would do. And we're checking different aspects of the controls, how they're designed, as well as how the evidence is showing up and is it actually operating effectively? Does the evidence actually support that the control is working? By default in the platform, this feature is turned off. This is only helpful once the organization has confidence that everything is up and working. This is usually near the end. This is the goal, the end state that you actually want to get to. This isn't a day one thing. Once you're there and happy with how things are going, you would opt in. And you do that via this link here. So you can say how often you want to do this. And as you can see here in this account, we're doing it every single day. The specific things that we're checking for today, and we're actually adding more of these all the time. We do a control policy material difference check. This is making sure the control and the policy it's related to don't clash in any way. And I'll show you a detailed example of this in a little bit. The next thing we check out is making sure that you've gathered all the evidence necessary to show the control is operating effectively. And the final thing is actually showing whether or not the control is operating effectively. And as you can see, no issues here because this is our all passing account. If there were an issue, it would be surfaced at the top. And then you can see some detail here about the different controls that it's checked. If there were an issue, it would bubble right to the top. And so that is control assurance. And organizations use this to make sure that there's no backsliding and they're staying on top of their compliance posture at all times. So you might be asking yourself, well, this is great. We have this high level dashboard. How do we actually get here? I'll show you an example of that by drilling in on a specific control. This here is the data backup and disaster recovery control. It's a very typical information security control. As you can see here, we've got the control statement or objective. In this case, backup copies of information, software, and systems are maintained and regularly tested to enable recovery from data loss or system disruptions and to ensure alignment with defined recovery time objectives. Or, in other words, you back up your stuff and you practice recovering from those backups to make sure that in the case where you really need to, you actually can recover. So that's the control that we're going to be looking at to do a deeper dive into how these features work. Every control has a few different fields on it, a few different things. So you can see here, there's status and responsibility. I wanted to also show off here in this section, every control has an owner. It's got a policy, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. And then you can also see that this control is being used by SOC 2 and it's linked to a couple of SOC 2 criteria. Every control can be linked to multiple frameworks. So in this demo account, there's just a single framework. That's why it's only linked to that one. But if we were to add ISO 27001 or PCI or anything else, you can actually have the same control serving multiple frameworks. That's a little bit about how this control relates to other things in the system. And then you'll see there's these two fields here. These are super important. These are used directly by the AI examination and test features. I'll show this off in a second, a click down of how these are actually used. But at a high level, what we've got here is these are the pieces of evidence that we need to demonstrate whether or not the control is working. And then here are the tests that are actually going to be conducted on those pieces of evidence. This is very similar to what an auditor would do as part of their examination. They would typically tell the client, I need evidence 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what would show up in, say, a SOC 2 report would be these kind of tests. This is how they actually tested to figure out whether the examination and testing was actually working. So I'll show for this, we'll just lens in on one of these things, this annual backup test documentation. So that's one of our required pieces of evidence. The way this is going to be tested is right here. Annual backup test validation says validate the presence of standalone documentation for the most recent annual backup and restore test. Confirm the document includes the date of the test, recovery objectives tested, test results, any identified gaps or lessons learned, and updates made to procedures based on test outcomes. So this is how we're going to figure out if the annual backup test actually covered the right things. As you can see, there's evidence attached to the control and corresponding pieces up here. Our system can handle importing automatically evidence via our evidence importers that we call receptors. So those will go out and hit third-party APIs and bring in evidence and route it to the controls where it's needed. In this demo, we have messier real world data, and the AI handles this great as well. So we wanted to show that manual evidence is harder to deal with and nice and clean, automatically gathered stuff. So you'll see attached, we've got a PDF, we've got a screenshot, we've got a spreadsheet. And in the case of that annual backup and test validation thing, we also have a PDF here of that test exercise that was done. So as you can see, this is a normal test document produced as a result of one of these tests. It says what it was, when it happened, who participated, what were all those recovery time objectives. And then there's details about all the various systems that were tested and some of the particular outcomes that we were looking to accomplish. So perfectly normal PDF, nothing special about this at all. It didn't need to be formatted specially to work with our system. And if I'm looking at this and I am recalling what we needed to look for in that document, it was, all of these things identified here. Looks pretty good.